Hi again, everybody. My name is Greg Anderson, and normally on this channel I do the Good Timekeeping Show where I talk about clocks and watches and things that have to do with that. And just a few weeks ago, out of the blue, I decided to do a movie review, and I got some pretty good feedback on that. Some people said, hey, that was kind of fun. Can you do more movie reviews? And so I thought, well, okay. This time I want to talk about a movie called Ford V Ferrari. I know this movie's been out for a couple of years already, so if you've wanted to see it, you've probably already seen it. I wanted to see it, but a lot of things got in the way. So I finally caught up with Ford V Ferrari. And what did I think of this movie? Well, it's a mixed bag, I'm afraid. On the one hand, I recommend the movie because I think watching this movie, you will get a feel for what it really must have felt like to be there in the mid-1960s when all this stuff took place. They did a great job of making things look like that period of time. They did a great job of recreating the moments in some of these car races, and even the moments of building the cars and getting the cars ready for the race. A lot of that, they managed to use some digital technology to enhance things because a lot of the places they were trying to portray simply do not exist, or do not exist the way they used to look way back, we're talking over 50 years ago. So therefore, they've done a great job of giving you the look, the feel, the sound, and the sights. And, watch this with a really great sound system, and you really feel like you're in the race, So all that, for all those reasons, I say yes, I recommend the movie. But I did have some thoughts, some concerns about Ford V Ferrari, and it all comes down to that sneaking suspicion as I was watching the movie that maybe what I was watching was not 100% historically accurate. Well, of course it wouldn't be 100% historically accurate because it wasn't made, 50 years ago when this stuff was actually happening. More than 50 years ago. So yeah, it can't be absolutely perfectly historically accurate, but, and they always, when they make movies like this, they take some artistic license just to kind of enhance the story, make it a little more exciting, make you kind of invest your own thoughts and feelings into the story more. So of course they're going to change a few things, but I thought that they changed a few things that didn't need to be changed. And I found it to be a distraction because watching the movie, not knowing that much about the actual history of what happened, there were moments when I kind of, I was thinking, I don't know, that doesn't ring true to me. And then afterwards, I found out, yeah, some of that stuff was just not true. So that's what bugged me. This movie is about 2.5 hours long already. I don't know. Credits are really long these days, but let's just say it's a 2.5 hour movie. That's a long movie. And when you spend time in a movie like this portraying things that didn't really happen, I think you're taking away time from the time you could have spent portraying things that actually did happen. And so anyway, because this movie's already been out for a couple of years, there's a lot of promotional material out there that I was able to watch after watching the movie and get kind of a feel for what were the actors and what was the director, what were all these people saying about the movie, with the critics, what did everybody say about this movie 2 years ago when it was new, and do I agree with that, and does some of what they're telling me inform my opinion of the movie today? And I found out a bunch of stuff. So first of all, critics really like this movie because they think that the lead actors in the movie really bring these characters to life. And they are not just characters, they're real people. So you got Matt Damon, who plays Carroll Shelby, famous race car designer, builder, and actually a race car driver before all that designing and building was really made a name for himself with that. And then you've got another character, Ken Miles, his name, and he is played by Christian Bale. So you got 2 Academy Award winning actors portraying these historical figures in the movie. And so the general consensus among critics at the time was that these great actors really bring these characters to life and make them three-dimensional characters in what could have been very, non-three-dimensional portrayal of these people. And I would have to say, I kind of disagree with that. And again, I would not blame the actors necessarily. I would wonder about the way the movie was written. I would wonder about the movie in a way about how the movie was directed. And was this the reason that, to me, the portrayal of these people and others that are historical figures in the movie, to me, the word that stuck out to me was cartoony. I thought a lot of what I was seeing these people do just seemed cartoony to me. So, well, I'll give you an example. Okay, so Carroll Shelby in this movie, he's this Texan who went to California to build race cars. And he was a successful race car driver himself until heart issues meant that he just couldn't do that anymore and guarantee that he would remain healthy. So he kind of, moved on to designing and building these race cars and kind of managing a team of race car drivers and, let them do the driving instead. And so he brings onto his team a gentleman by the name of Ken Miles. Ken Miles, this Englishman, World War II veteran, a great engineer, and just the most amazing race car driver Carroll Shelby ever knew. So he is not only able to race the cars, but also help to design and build the cars. And so they're the two main guys that are building these cars. And why is it Ford V Ferrari when we're talking about Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles? Because early in this movie, and I don't think I have to call this a spoiler alert because the movie's been out for a couple of years, plus this is historical. So I don't know if you're supposed to say spoiler alert when it's historical. You go back over 50 years and you can find this information out. What happened was, in the early 1960s, I guess, the Ford Motor Company was in a bit of a slump. They wanted to liven up their brand and sell cars, of course. And, can you say Edsel? They didn't. I don't think they talked about the Edsel at all in this movie, but certainly that hurt the Ford Motor Company leading up to the period that's portrayed in this movie. And so the president of the Ford Motor Company at the time, Henry Ford II, who's actually the grandson of the first Henry Ford who started the whole company. Henry Ford II is in charge of the company, and he's frustrated, and he wants people to bring him ideas to rejuvenate this company. And so one of the young executives at the company at the time was named Lee Iacocca. Now, later on, he went on to head the Chrysler Corporation. But, back in the 60s, he was with Ford, and his vision of how to reinvigorate the Ford brand was to make them competitive in the world of motorsport. If a bunch of great Ford cars could win races, then young people would be excited about driving Ford cars, and that would increase sales, and that would make this great. So Lee Iacocca in the movie, he's the one who sought out Carroll Shelby as the guy who's going to work with Ford in order to build great race cars. And why versus Ferrari? What's the problem with Ferrari? Well, in the early 1960s, the Ferrari company was dominating the world of motorsport. The prestigious races around the world, especially the 24-hour of Le Mans, Ferrari just was unstoppable, unbeatable. So Ford tried to make a deal with the Ferrari company. Even though they were doing great in the races, the Ferrari company was in bad financial trouble. So Ford decided, let's buy the Ferrari company, and together with what they bring into our fold, we can win races and have great cars and sell great cars. And in the process of trying to put this deal together, people were offended. And Enzo Ferrari, who was Mr. Ferrari in charge of the Ferrari company, personally insulted the guys at Ford. And so it became this personal, rivalry. We're going to beat Ferrari, and we're going to beat them on their turf, which is the racetrack, and we're going to stick it to them. That's how it's portrayed in the movie. I'm not sure exactly if that's, historically accurate to every fine detail, but definitely there was really a rivalry between Ford and Ferrari, and Ford was determined to win. And so that's why you get Carroll Shelby involved. You're going to build these great cars. You're going to race these great cars. We're going to beat Ferrari on the racetrack. And, that's how it's going to go down. So meanwhile, back in the movie, you see, okay, the critics and everybody said, well, these great performances by these Academy Award-winning actors. We have, nuanced performances by these actors. And to me, I said, again, the word was cartoony. So in the movie, you got Carroll Shelby, and he's this happy-go-lucky Texan, always with a grin on his face, always confident about how he can build great cars and he can race them, and this is all going to be. But then on the other hand, dealing with the politics of a giant company like the Ford Motor Company and trying to, keep those executives happy while still doing what needs to be done from his perspective, building these cars. And then Ken Miles, well, he's even more volatile, see, because he has no patience whatsoever for the executives at the big company. He just wants to build great cars, and he sees these executives at the company and the whole structure of the company as being an impediment to actually getting things done. And so what you see in the performance of playing the Ken Miles character, you see that he's just kind of extreme in everything he does. If he's happy, he's super happy. If he's angry, he's super angry. If he's frustrated, he's super frustrated. And if his wife comes in, he's googly-eyed in love with his wife. And this is, I'm thinking, to me, these kinds of emotions portrayed by an actor, they should, frustration is from this level to this level. And you just kind of see the way frustration is portrayed. And then happiness is kind of this level, this level. This is how I think a great performance would be. And instead, I think what we're seeing here is happy is here. So we're either neutral or we're happy to the extreme. We're angry to the extreme. We're googly-eyed in love to the extreme. And so all I'm seeing is these extremes, and I'm not seeing so much of the middle. And so that's kind of how the performance struck me. And it might even be historical for all I know, but to me, it just rang true as cartoony to me. Also, the executives from Ford that are portrayed in this movie are kind of cartoony. The head of the Ford Motor Company, Henry Ford II, is, either satiated that everything's okay with the company, or he really wants results, or things like that. And the one guy who represents all the jerks in the executive positions of the company, he's just really a bad guy, making everybody angry throughout the entire movie. Everything he does is just kind of irritating. So that to me, that's the cartoony aspect of it all. Now, I'll give you an example of something that didn't ring true to me in the movie. There's a scene in which Carroll Shelby, played by Matt Damon, wants to impress the Henry Ford II and kind of give him a glimpse of what he's trying to do with the race cars and kind of catch him off his guard. So they invent this scene, which I found out is not historically accurate, in which Carroll Shelby gets Henry Ford II in a race car and races him around the track, doing some really extreme driving that basically elicits a highly emotional reaction from Henry Ford II, because it's very scary and it's all kinds of, and that never really happened. There's another scene in there where there's some executives from the Ford Motor Company in an airplane. Carroll Shelby's also in the airplane. And at one point, Carroll Shelby says, it says to the pilot, "Hey, I used to fly in the war. I can fly one of these things. You mind if I, take the yoke and fly a little bit?" And then he does some crazy flying stunt and scares the executives from the Ford Motor Company. Again, something that didn't actually happen. And I'm watching the movie thinking, did that really happen? So when I found it didn't happen, it made me second guess all the other things in the movie that seemed a little bit cartoony and weird to me. There's a scene in which Ken Miles' wife is frustrated with Ken Miles. And so she is driving the family car and she does something crazy behind the wheel to kind of get his attention emotionally. And again, I'm going, did that really happen? So those are the things that kind of bug me about it. But again, I would say if you want to get the feel for how this all went down, what it feels like to be in a race car in the 1960s, driving around on these races, by all means, watch the movie. Oh, there was one other thing that didn't ring true to me, and I found out, of course, that it didn't happen either. This was a moment when a highly emotionally charged encounter between Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles, and it turns into a fist fight in front of his house. And so some people are kind of excited because, hey, this is Jason Bourne and Batman having a fist fight out in the park. Well, no, not really. It was Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby having a fist fight, and it wasn't that big deal of a fight. and it wasn't even real. I don't know what they were trying to portray. Why did they add this scene to the movie? What were they trying to invoke in the storytelling? Because this thing never really happened. So anyway, the thing is, when I found out, watching some of the behind the scenes stuff and some of the interviews that were done when the movie was new, I found out that the director of the movie, and also the actors felt this way too, felt like the movie was more or less a metaphor for what it's like to make movies in Hollywood. Okay. So some of their storytelling was informed by that concern rather than what really happened with Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles and the Ford Motor Company when they were trying to win on the racetrack against Ferrari. No, instead, it was all a metaphor for how difficult it is to make a movie in Hollywood. Okay. And well, I guess that makes sense. These people make movies in Hollywood, so if they want to approach this in a way that they understand, but I think this took away from the movie, from the storytelling in a general sense. So, for example, here's something I know about what it's like to make a movie in Hollywood. Sometimes you deal with creative people who can be temperamental and volatile, diva-like. But most of the time, you do not deal with people like that. Now, there was a famous incident on the set of a movie where Christian Bale himself, chewed out the director of photography for distracting him during a scene, and that may or may not have been justified the way he treated that guy. There was an incident just a few months ago where Tom Cruise was yelling at crew members on one of his movies because they weren't following the COVID protocols the way that he thought they should. So when you see an actor that is that volatile and you hear the recording of the way they were cussing out the people on the set, then you think, wow, why would anyone want to work with that guy? Or you might think, I guess all big time actors are like that. The truth is they're not all like that. And even those guys aren't like that all the time. So why would you tolerate that? Well, in a general sense, if it were me going out for a movie, they could find 1,000 guys who look like me to play the part. And if I behaved that way, they would replace me in an instant. And I wouldn't blame them. But when you're making a movie and you can get Christian Bale in your movie, that's going to sell tickets. So therefore, you're going to put up with what Christian Bale does because somehow you've convinced yourself that he's bringing something to the production that nobody else can bring. And even though he might be volatile off screen, when the cameras are turned on, he's delivering what you need to make your movie. And that's why they tolerate people like that when they behave that way. So in the movie, you've got Ken Miles. Ken Miles, the character in the movie, is very volatile. He speaks his mind. He offends the people from the Ford Motor Company. And Carroll Shelby has to be the guy in between Ken Miles and the Ford Motor Company and kind of say, Ken, relax a little bit. Ford Motor Company, it's all right. I got this under control. So he's kind of the referee there in between them. But he tolerates Ken Miles and his volatility because he knows that in the end, there's only one person he knows of who can deliver what Ken Miles can do for the project, building and racing that car. So to me, that's a big metaphor as far as what they're showing in this movie, what it's like to make a movie, and using the Ken Miles volatile character. And also the people from the executives at the studio or the executives at the Ford Motor Company who are making ridiculous suggestions of what they think we should do in order to get ready for this race. I can definitely see that in the real world, studio executives giving their notes about what should happen behind the scenes on a movie are a lot of times just, oh, would you guys please not bother us because you have terrible ideas. And so that's the way it's kind of portrayed here in this movie. The guys from Ford are like, oh, please, no, don't make us do that. Don't tell that. Don't do this. You're going to mess everything up. We're not going to reach the goal of winning this race with the best car ever if we keep listening to you guys. In the same sense, when you make a movie, you're thinking, we're not going to make the best movie ever if we keep listening to the bad suggestions from you studio guys. And so I can definitely see the metaphor here that they've created in this movie, Ford V Ferrari, making it very much like a metaphor for what it's like to deal with studio executives, volatile creative people, and trying to make your movie. In the end, it turns out that when you were trying to win a car race and you think you're Carroll Shelby and thinking the most important thing I do is win this race, it turns out the people that are paying for all this, the Ford executives, what they're really most interested in is selling more cars. And the race is just another tool for them to reach that objective. Just as when you're making a movie, you want to make the best movie we've ever made. We're going to win awards for this. This is going to be a classic. We're going to sell 1 million copies on home video. It's going to be a big hit. And what the studio is thinking is just, can we make a lot of money off of this movie? You know, you tell the studio people say, you know, if we just had a picture of, a sewer and raw sewage swirling around and that sold a lot of tickets, could we just do that? And the filmmaker would go, that would be a lousy movie. And they say, yeah, but would it make lots of money? Would it sell a lot of tickets? Well, yeah, it would. Then let's do that. That's how studio executives think a lot. So anyway, again, great metaphor for the whole mentality of what do these studio executives and the car company executives want? What do the volatile, talented people want? And who's the guy in the middle just trying to make a great product and hoping that it all works out? Which reminds me of one other thing. And this has bothered me in the movies. You would think that the people who make movies are some of the most creative people in the world, and they are. And for the most part, when I talk about the volatile people behind the scenes, it's really not a big deal. That doesn't really happen. Most people behind the scenes on a movie, they're interested in doing their job and doing it well, and that's all they do. And they're not volatile about it. They show up on time. They do their job. They don't complain. Everything works really well behind the scenes of almost every movie ever made. Okay? But why is it that the people who make movies do such a poor job of showing you what the creative process is like? That confuses me. Whenever I see a movie that has kind of a movie within a movie, and a movie about making a movie, if it's a fictional thing, they get so many details wrong. And I don't know why, because all the people that are making that movie know exactly what it's like to make a movie. So why do they portray it wrong? I don't know. I'll give you one example, and this is a very obscure reference. Great friend of mine, Adam Rifkin. We grew up together. He makes movies in Hollywood now. And he made a movie with Penn Jillette, and it's called Director's Cut. And it's kind of an obscure movie. You might not find it out there. It's just way off the beaten path kind of a movie. But in this movie, there's a movie within a movie that's kind of behind the scenes of making a movie. And this is probably the most accurate I've ever seen of what it really feels like to be on set behind the scenes of a movie. When they portray those scenes in Adam Rifkin's movie called Director's Cut, starring Penn Jillette, the magician, that's the best I've ever seen. And it's a movie you probably won't ever see, because it's just kind of really obscure there. But anyway, so why is it that so many people have such a hard time portraying the creative process, people who know better? I think of two other examples, not just this movie, but two other examples. So one movie going back a few years, back to the early 2000s, a movie called The Aviator by Martin Scorsese, starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Howard Hughes. In that movie, the way it's portrayed is that Howard Hughes is kind of nuts, okay? And we all have heard the stories about late in his life, he was doing some really unusual, eccentric things that maybe had some serious mental health problems there in the end. But in this movie, they kind of portray him as being kind of nuts the whole way through. And so when you see that he comes up with some brilliant but really unusual ideas for the time of how to improve airplanes, or how to improve the airline industry, they portray that in the movie. It's another nutty Howard Hughes idea, but for some strange reason, it really was a good idea. But, it's just kind of dumb luck with Howard. He just has crazy ideas all the time. And every now and then, one that is crazy actually turns out to be a good idea. That's how, to me, that's how I reacted to watching The Aviator. That they really did a poor job of portraying that, while Howard Hughes may have had some definitely crazy ideas, some of them were not crazy at all. They were great. And so why can't you kind of show me how he came up with great ideas in the midst of his crazy ideas? I don't know why they couldn't. A more recent movie called Bohemian Rhapsody comes to mind as well. And in this movie, we're supposed... There's another movie that has a lot of problems portraying actual historical facts. You know, if you want to play really loose with the facts of exactly how did Freddie Mercury meet the guys that formed the band Queen, you know, even though those guys were actually participating, cooperating in the making of this movie, they've messed up the facts of what really happened in the, you know, the background of this story coming up with the rock group Queen and coming up with all the great hit songs that we all remember from the rock group Queen. So there are moments in this movie where they portray, they're in the studio, they're creating these great hit songs that you remember from the radio, from, you know, the kind of ubiquitous today. And how did they make this song? Well, the way they portray it in the movie too often is that Freddie Mercury had an idea in his head, kind of a vision. This is how the song is going to be. So he started suggesting all these really off-the-wall ideas. Let's try this, do this, now do this. No, just calling the shots like he had it all figured out in his head, and all he needed to do was you do that part, and it's all going to come together. And at the time in the movie, it's portrayed as, well, that's a really crazy idea. Why do you want to do that? That's really crazy. Like no one understood him at all until the record was finally done, and then they went, oh, I guess that's pretty good. And I just don't buy it. I don't think that's how it really went down in the studio with Freddie Mercury. And I think it's unfair to Freddie Mercury himself to make it look like he had a lot of crazy ideas and every now and then they just turned out to be good ideas. No, I don't accept that. I think Freddie Mercury was an extremely talented musician. And he had some great ideas. They weren't crazy. And the people that probably heard them the first time thought, well, I've never heard that before, but it's a great idea. They didn't say, I've never heard that before, and it's a crazy idea. I wonder if this will work. See, so that bothered me. And so here in this movie, Ford V Ferrari, I'm coming back now. There are things in this movie that are, to me, they're the same thing. That they portray that Ken Miles had some crazy ideas. He did some crazy things. And then just by dumb luck, they happen to be good ideas. And they happen to make the cars better. And they happen to make him win the race. No, I don't think it went down that way. I don't think that Carroll Shelby and the rest of the team thought that. I think they might have said, well, that's something we've never seen before. But you know what, Ken? That's a great idea. Not, he's so crazy. I wonder if this will work. So that bugs me. And so I think, again, going back to the metaphor of Hollywood, what we're looking at here is that when you go to a movie set and people are trying to make a movie, everyone there is trying to do their best. Everyone there wants to make a great movie. You know, everybody knows we're showing up today. We're going to do this scene. Okay, so the cameraman knows this is the kind of camera gear we need. The lighting guys, this is the kind of lighting we need. The grips know what they need. The hair and makeup, the props people, they all know what they need to put into the work that day. And they're all doing their best to make it work. And the actors are also doing their best. Nobody wants to make a bomb of a movie. And yet you can get people like, well, Matt Damon, for example. He's made a lot of movies. Some of them big hits. Some of them just absolute bombs. And he probably sits around and going, I don't know what happened because I tried my best every single time. And sometime it worked, sometime it didn't work. I guess it's just dumb luck that some movies work and some don't work, because I'm certainly not trying to make a bad movie. So I have people who make movies, they think that way. And maybe the people who wrote and directed this movie, Ford v Ferrari, still have a little bit of that inside them, saying, you know, I don't know. I try every time. I try to make a great movie every time. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. I guess it's just dumb luck. And so that's how they portray creativity. In this movie, creating a great car. In a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody, they're portraying, different people making that movie, obviously, portraying what it's like to make a great song. Sometimes your crazy ideas work, and sometimes it's just dumb luck. We can't figure out why some things work and some things don't work. So is that why they make movies like that, where they portray creativity as, I don't know, just crazy ideas? Sometimes they're good. But it bugs me. It really bugs me that they can't figure. I mean, look at me. Okay, I have a YouTube channel. Well, if I could sit down and say, you know, if I do this, it'll be a viral video. It'll get 1 million views in one day, and then the next day it'll get 2 million views. And you know, if I could make a viral video, I would do it every time. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to make it a viral video. I don't know if this video right now that I'm making is going to get a lot of views or it's going to be a total bomb. I don't know. I guess it's just dumb luck. Well, I don't know, because the other thing is I don't have a marketing team. I don't have writers. I don't have a staff. I don't have people advising me on what's going to make it a hit video and what's not. I'm just out there saying, this is the stuff I want to talk about today. Take it or leave it. And tomorrow, no matter how well this video does or how much it bombs, we'll put out a different video. And that's how it works for me. It's not my whole life writing on whether or not this video is successful. And, if this video is a bomb, I don't have people coming to me saying, we're not going to let you make videos anymore, Greg. No, I don't have to deal with that. So anyway, yeah, we all, those of us who are creative, we all wish that people would appreciate every single bit of effort we put into it equally, equal to, how much effort we put into it. And when I don't put any effort into it, that's okay if that video bombs. And when I put a lot of effort into it, I feel so cheated when it's not a hit. I don't know. To me, that's not how it works. And, I'm not here to make $1 million anyway. Or maybe I am. Hey. So those are my thoughts on Ford V Ferrari. What if you want the real story of what really happened and not the Hollywood fabrication that kind of shows you what it might have looked like and what it might have sounded like, but doesn't really tell you the real story of Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles and that whole thing? How are you going to find that story? Well, guess what? There's a silly comedian out there named Adam Carolla who cares deeply and thinks quite seriously about race cars. And he's also a documentary producer. And he's got 2 documentaries he's produced. One of them is about 2.5 hours long. It's called Shelby American, and it's the story of Carroll Shelby in a documentary form. So you want to watch the movie Ford v Ferrari and get that visceral Hollywood experience with the big sound and special effects and all that. And then you want the real history of it. Check out Shelby American, produced by Adam Carolla. There's also one he produced called The 24-Hour War. And that talks about, the race where, the Ford versus Ferrari racing, the actual documentary style historical view of that. You might want to check those out. And then you'll feel like you have really, really studied the story of Carroll Shelby and Ford and Ken Miles and all that. Thanks to, silly comedian Adam Carolla, who can, give you some really serious stuff. And anyway, those are my thoughts on Ford v Ferrari. Maybe if I'd seen the movie when it was like brand new and I only had, a few hours to think about it, I could have come up with a much more succinct review. But in this case, I just saw too much other material about the story. And so that's why this turned into such a long video. And everything I wanted to say about Ford v Ferrari and Carroll Shelby and Ford and Ken Miles and Hollywood. So how do I emphasize this? I recommend you see Ford v Ferrari and see it with a good screen and a good sound system. And then if you're truly interested in knowing more than that, check out the documentaries, because I like cars. All right. And that's all for now. I'm going to have other videos. I didn't use any clips from the movie when I talked about Ford v Ferrari, because you know what Matt Damon looks like. You know what Christian Bale looks like. You can find clips, you can find pictures, and I don't have to worry about copyright stuff because I didn't include them in my video, and that's why I did it that way. And I will make more videos about other stuff. I hope you'll join me right back here on YouTube.